I think you need to think about tasting everything, because you're a young man and you want to figure out what the hell you like and what you're good at. There's just an incredible, like kind of access point of like what you're great at and what you love. When you stumble into being somebody like me, you really win. When what you're naturally great at is what you naturally love the most, and away you go. The amount of people that I meet every day that are great at something but have no interest in being a CFO. They're insane with numbers, but they don't want to do it. They want to sing, right? Or, and so that's tough. You see it in athletics. Like, people don't understand athletes. The amount of athletes that just do it because it was the best way, in the same way that somebody goes and becomes an accountant, and they don't love competition, and they don't love the sport. It's crazy, when you look at them, because you're like, you're one of the 15 best, and they don't love it, which is why they're not the greatest athlete of all time. The greatest athletes of all time are the ones who love it and have it. And so I think what you need to do is taste everything. It's kind of like food. You don't know what your favorite food is if you only eat one food. So I would take advantage of your youth and your flexibility at this kind of age, and try to taste everything, play with everything, figure out what you might be good at, what you might like, and then you make a decision. When I think about being 41 years old and feeling as young as I feel like I'm 10 years old. Like, I feel like I have my whole life in front of me. And I think it's very difficult for youngsters to realize that. I'm sure some of us that have lived a little bit longer, you just don't, like when I was 20, how old are you? When I was 26, 41 seemed like a fucking long way away. My 8 years older cousin who worked with me at Wine Library seemed old to me. He was 34 when I was 26, so 41, fuck. Like it's funny for me to think about like how you're seeing me, but I'm telling you, you're gonna feel exactly the way you feel right now at 41. And so that's interesting, because when people understand that, you can start deploying more patience. Because right now you wanna prove it. You've got, right? Yeah, quickly. I can read that because you're in the fake, like first words out of your mouth always are such an indicator of what's on your mind. I never cared to fake it till I made it, because I didn't care what people thought. When you can eliminate that, shit changes real quick. Even think about high school and then going into college. Like, high school is so tough for people because it's the apex of when everything's about what other people think. And then you love the transition to university or the last year of high school because you care a little less, right? But those first couple years of high school, I don't know the school system exactly how you guys do it here, but like everybody's wrapped up in that 12 to 17-year-old age of like everything's about what everybody else thinks, and that's why so many people hate that era. I just never went through that, luckily. Just hardwiring, good parenting, serendipity, circumstance, wrapping my self-esteem in things that I was great at. I'm not really good at thinking about what I'm bad at. Even in interviews, the only time I get stumped is they're like, what do you struggle with, or what's a failure? I'm like, I just don't even like quantify it. I don't think it's worth it. I think people dwell too much. I give away all my best advice. At Garyvee, I'm showing inside meetings to what the strategy of my company is, and my competitors can just watch it and copy it. I mean, it's crazy what I'm actually doing, because it speaks to my confidence that I'm always gonna keep inventing the next thing, and my understanding that 99% of people aren't gonna do anything about it anyway. So I just bought Pure Wow, which is a women's media publishing company. It's like a Refinery 29 competitor. I saw the Refinery 29 CEO at CS, and I rolled up on him, and we've been friends for a long time, acquaintances, friendly. And he had a good vibe, but like I addressed it immediately. I'm like, listen, I want to rip your head off like that. I'm competitive, it's a game, like that's what I do. I'm like, but then I said to him, but honestly, I think we should join up and we should go after Condé Nast and Hearst, and there's much bigger media women companies than us. Together, we can really do some damage, and I don't care if I get 50 cents or 30 cents on the dollar. I think the best collaborations are the most unlikely. When Burger King asked McDonald's on that campaign they did, I don't know if you guys saw this, where they asked to make a love child of the Big Mac and the Whopper. To me, if tomorrow Nike and Adidas, in the height of Yeezy's going after the Nike brand, did a collaboration, to me, you even said it, the most unlikely ones. It's easy when a Crain company does a JV with like a sock company and they make a co-pack. Like, they're not really competing. I think the most interesting ones are when you have real genuine competition and people collaborate. And so I think the ones that are most interesting is when Facebook and Snapchat will have secret meetings and say, you know what, we have to team up on vertical video because that's bigger than what we're competing against each other because we have to take down television ads. That's interesting. You know, I love that stuff. You know, I know that's pretty frothy, but I think that's when it gets most interesting. So FedEx and UPS should get together and say, listen, Amazon and Uber are dangerous. What can we do together? Disruptors, and it's most interesting to me when the incumbents that are on the verge of being disrupted are smart enough to disrupt. So like, for example, every hotel company in the world should have gotten together, threw money together, and then bought residential, and then created an Airbnb competitor. You know what I mean? That to me is really neat. Now I know that's pretty heady. On a more small business level, I think it gets really interesting when the next generation comes in and they yell at their father that not everything is competition and you can do business with the guy down the street. My best collaborations was when I had no money. When Wine Library had no money, none. We were doing $3.8 million a year, 10% gross profit before expense. We had no money, there was no marketing budget. My first year's marketing budget was $14,000. What did I do? I went to a lot of the other local businesses in Millburn and asked them if I could put a bottle of wine on their counter at the barber shop with little coupons.
So what do you think holds people back? I mean, you're Garyvee.
Yes.
So, and you've always had that.
Yes.
I'm just gonna fix the
Yes.
What do you think holds people back from those?
Human inefficiencies.
Yeah.
Fear, ego.
Yeah.
I don't need you, I can do it. Cynicism, I don't trust you. You're not gonna leave, when I leave, you're gonna just take the flyers, throw them in the garbage and drink my wine. That's what holds my dad back. Cynicism, you know? Yeah, cynicism.
You talk a lot about young people not having enough patience.
Yes.
What do you think are the other major factors that young people don't really have to hold people back?
Experience. You know, I think young kids are getting tricked right now and think just because it's a technology boom and just because they understand it, that they have this great advantage over 45-year-old executors. It's audacity, which I love. Channeled properly, it gives them the lack of fear to do things. So I really don't talk a lot about it because I don't want to stop it because I think it's their greatest gift as well. But I think it's patience, I think it's lack of experience, and the biggest one is lack of talent. Every young kid thinks they're entitled to be an entrepreneur now. It's the cool thing. Truth is, it's not gonna work out. Like, it just isn't. The math doesn't work out. Like, 98% of the people that are starting startups are gonna lose. And again, the reason I started with the economic growth of the globe is keeping a fake entrepreneur alive. Most of your friends that in their 20s that have businesses are actually making money if they're in tech. They've raised capital and they're losing money every month. That's ultimately something that doesn't work out.
Second question, sorry. A lot of the time I do web design development a lot for small businesses. A lot of the time I can go in, I can show a portfolio, I can say I want to expand that portfolio, and they still might choose paying like €5,000, ridiculous amounts of money, when I can say I can do the same work, here's the work that I've done. Is there any way of combating that?
No. You're being subjected to age discrimination. So the way to combat it is to not dwell on it and not try to sell people who aren't sellable. It's a volume game. Just go to every business instead of focusing on trying to convince the dog shop owner that he's making a mistake. Though one of the great things I've always done, because I started off as a young kid and I started off as like, they would walk into my family business and I'm like, can I help you with wine? And they're like, you can't help me with wine. For the first 7 years, they were right. I was 15 years old. But I knew a lot more. And if they gave me data, I could tell them what they should drink. But I think that one thing I learned very early on by all that rejection, both being a bad student and both being a kid that tried to sell wine when he was underage and nobody would listen to him, is that is that you can't sell people that aren't sellable. You're way better off putting your energy and crushing it for the people that give you an at-bat, right? Versus the people that aren't. And so what I would do if I were you guys is I would shift into the mindset of thinking that you're a media company, comma, NGO. And what that would do, and I actually think that's the advice I'd give all of you. So I think you should blog every day about the world of preschool and art, like everything. Profile a teacher, speak about something that happened 50 years ago, a media company. If you all think of yourself as a media company, media content is the gateway to the business. Look what I do. I, Gary, am a media company. It's the gateway to building the fastest, biggest growing agency in the history of advertising. I always say to people, if they really pay attention to what I'm doing, they'll get much more value out of me than anything else. Like, why am I making so much video? Why am I documenting everything? Why am I, producing a t-shirt? Why am I doing the Apple show? Why am I doing what I'm doing? No matter, I'll never be as great as a communicator as I am, right? And I'm really good at it, and it's why I've been successful. I'll never be able to fully synthesize ahead of my own actions. So what does that mean? That means you should write a Medium blog post every week. It means that you should do a podcast in the NGO space every week. Why did Scott Harrison and Adam Braun from Pop and Pencil Promise and Charity Water become such players? Because they were club promoters, they were marketers, they treated it differently. And the truth is, too many people in the NGO space take for granted people's goodwill. They think just because they're an NGO, people should give a shit. There's a trillion NGOs. There's a trillion things that are trying to do good for the world. So content, podcast, video, written, quotes, pictures.